Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight, which is not such a great night weather-wise, but I do appreciate you coming out to hear about the situation that we're dealing with at the high school. And I assume most of you are dealing with at home, with students learning from home again, which we never expected to happen. So I'm going to be very transparent with all of you about what we're dealing with. We had a water main break under a slab, which is part of a hallway in the school. So that water line is somewhere between 7 and 8 feet beneath the concrete slab surface. When our professionals started to go in to search for this water line to try to do that repair, they noticed what we believe is probably heating oil, a small amount that leached out, but we don't know where it's coming from. We don't know how much, but we do know that we do have some type of oil mixed with the water. But it's not very much. It's mostly water. And so we are remediating all of that soil. And I'm going to show you some pictures and give you some description of what's going on. But first and foremost, I want to make sure that you all know that safety of the students and staff is my top priority. Without water in the building, we couldn't use any of the restroom facilities. No hand washing, no toilet flushing, could not cook any food. So the health department determined that we did have an emergency that necessitated our closing, and if we went to remote instruction, we would get credit for those days. The advantage we have with our remote instruction delivery mechanism that we learned through COVID is that we can get credit for those days in these unusual circumstances. I know that remote learning, virtual learning does not work for every single student. It does not work for every single family. So I want to acknowledge that tonight. But we are working hard as we open this presentation to bring this to conclusion so we can return students, because we know we have impacts to the academics, we have impacts to the athletics, and we have impacts to the arts. So with me tonight, I have Dr. Vanella, who's principal of the high school. I have Dr. Boley, who's assistant superintendent for academics. And I have Mr. Juliana, who is our assistant superintendent for operations and finance. So each of us will have a turn speaking tonight, but I wanted to open this up with some visual. So we managed to come up with some photographs from the environmental engineers. They had a document of what the high school looked like on the left-hand side in 1961. And you can see that it was more of a California campus. The arc that you see right here is an open canopy walkway. So students actually moved outside to move from these modules around the building. And so the reason why I put this up here, and like we wanted to talk about this, is the way this design was actually constructed. There were individual boilers that fueled or fired and heated the components of this building. So you had utilities that were going out from different spots to service all these things. And if you look to the right, that is what the footprint of the high school looks like today. Those are all the additions that closed in the campus and made it East Brunswick High School that your children all know today. And if you look to the right of that circle represents the area that we're working in right now. That is, the hallway has been pulled up. So I'm gonna give you one more view. This is actually the same picture of the high school on the right, but a representation of all the additions color-coded on the left-hand side, so you can see all the additions put to the building. This is where we are. This is draped. This is where they've actually pulled up the floor. The purpose of this, you're going to see a lot of machinery, but the purpose of this is to create a negative pressure situation where we pump any kind of things that are bad outside the building. We don't want to have anything inside the building that would jeopardize the safety, long-term safety, or immediate safety of the building. Just another picture of that same draped area. And here it is, that drape actually just pulled back. This is the beginning of that excavation. And I will tell you that Dr. Vanella, Mr. Giuliano, and myself were at the high school at the site just before coming over here. They have a moderately sized Kubota excavator. It is probably as big as the hallway. There's not much room to maneuver. And they are literally scraping the soil back 2 inches at a time in a footprint that's about 8 feet by 8 feet square. But they're doing that and going down 2 inches at a time because they don't know exactly what's below that next level. That soil is being pulled out. It's being taken out of the building. It will be put in 55-gallon drums, and it will be taken off site. And it will be replaced at some point with new soil. Again, you can see just the filtration just to make sure the site is safe and secure. This is actually a piece of conduit that is badly corroded. And I don't know if you can see, but it's actually got quite a gap on the side. This area right here. So along with this process, our staff is replacing electrical service in the hallway. Mr. Giuliano will talk about that in a little more detail. This is one of the drums they're using for disposal. And of course, the air filtration just to get the air out of the building. We've actually taken over Mr. Malta's office, Julia Circus' office. This is being draped through their office and is actually being expelled out his office window. This is a pit that is under a demonstration table in what most parents would probably know as L7. It's a demonstration room at the front of the building. It was more of an amphitheater type classroom. There's water in there, and so we don't know where the water is exactly emanating from, but there is water in this pit and water in this electrical conduit or this electrical outlet that is in the floor. And then in an adjacent custodial area, I just want to show this to you. This is outside, or that black pipe above is an old oil pipe that was installed many, many years ago. So I just wanted to give you an example of some of the plumbing that we're dealing with in the high school. I do not know the age of that pipe, but that pipe is all in good condition, but that was just some of the installation that was done at that time. So I'm going to have Mr. Giuliano talk about the actual schedule because we were closed for 2 days last week, and then I had to unfortunately inform you that we're going to be closed through this week. That permission from the executive county superintendent and from the Department of Health is good through this week. So that means we get credit for all the days that students participate in remote learning this week. But I wanted to be clear with you, the parents and public, about what we are doing, and we do have a plan. So, Mr. Giuliano, you want to talk about that?
Thank you, Dr. Valesky. Good evening, everyone. So, starting with last Thursday, the 26th, when the water line break was identified, it was identified when we had water bubbling up through what was L7, the demonstration room, in the lower corner of that room. We began immediately with calling in our plumbing professionals to assess the situation, identify where this break might be coming from, and having to turn the water off for the facility. Looking at that on Thursday and Friday, trying to figure out how do we approach this situation, because we don't know exactly where. We surmise where the break is, but we won't know until we actually see it. So coming up with various options, we determined to have to move forward within the corridor. And we were on hold over the weekend because of having to mobilize with the remediation company that had to come in with its special equipment and removing the soil. Mobilization took place on Monday, which was today. And then from that point, excavation began. The soils being removed very carefully so as not to jeopardize any other utilities, any kind of piping, anything that it may be contained below grade. We just don't know what is contained below grade. And if I refer back to one of the images that Dr. Valesky showed earlier of the 1961 building versus the building as it stands today, with all of the additions that have been put on, there's no way to know what was buried under each of those additions. So, moving forward, we are anticipating, at least from what the excavation company is telling us, that they should, unless we run into some problems, be able to get to the point where the pipe actually exists below grade tomorrow. So once that takes place, then the plumbing contractor will be able to come in. We anticipate that to take place on Wednesday. Plumbing contractor will come in and patch that pipe before we can proceed to the next level. We run, and quite honestly, if that repair is not called for in that area, we'll have to go to another level of investigation and resolution for this in trying to identify, well, where else might that break be? Wherever it is, it's going to be somewhere under that building. So we'll have to take this a step at a time. We're being optimistic right now. So proceeding from the water line repair, you see electrical rewiring. In one of the photos where Dr. Valesky noted the conduit, that conduit contained electrical wiring. And so that electrical wiring was also frayed and needed to be replaced. So our in-house electricians in the meantime have been pulling new cable to be able to power that entire wing. It's the 1500 wing, which is the area where this break is, where the science rooms are. So while the other work is taking place, we're also doing work with the electrical rewiring. The next item is the installation of a steel plate. So once the soil is excavated, the repair is done, there won't be enough time to have to properly fill, compact, and pour concrete over that opening. So we'll need to install a steel plate over that opening and have it secured in order to be able to reopen the building. That fill and pouring of concrete will need to take place at a later date during a break. If we don't do that, it will simply elongate the amount of time that we're closed, and we want to get students back in the building as soon as possible. At the beginning Wednesday or so, should everything be on target, we will be doing water sampling and testing. We want to make sure that the water is fit, that it has not been contaminated in any way. And then we'll be doing a full system flush to ensure that we've got clean water going through the entire system. And once we have results, we'll be in a better place to be able to look toward a reopening. And at the same time, we're also going to be, once the excavation work is done, we're anticipating we'll be doing some air quality testing. Any of the fumes from the equipment and so forth will be dissipated from the building, but we want to be sure that the air quality is in good shape for returning to the building for both students and staff. This is our scenario right now, looking through the end of the week. If we have to push another day or so, that'll give us at least the weekend. We're anticipating that right now, based on the information that we have, we should be okay for the end of the week or the weekend. That's all I've got at this point.
So as Mr. Juliana said, we're pushing towards the end of the week. When I say we're pushing hard. We do want the students back in school, and we want the building reopened. The things that are going to be factors that we cannot control is once we get to a point where the repair is made and the samples need to go to a laboratory, we have to get those samples to a laboratory before the weekend because they don't work on the weekends. So that testing has to be done at the end of the week, and us giving the green light by end of business on Friday. I just want to reiterate one thing, and I don't know if I said it at the very beginning. One of the reasons why we had to close the entire school is we do not have isolation valves in this building where we could simply turn off part of a building and leave the other part operational. This is a completely all on or all off operation. That's unfortunate because we wish we could do that. We could isolate this part of the building and bring our students back. We could work around this if students were in the building. But the structure of the building does not allow that right now. So one of the things that, if I was a parent in East Brunswick and had a child in East Brunswick High School, I would want to know some things. So I thought, I'm just going to put it out there and dispel the rumors right away. Our water line break did not occur because we weren't doing preventative maintenance. I'm very proud, in fact, of what we do in East Brunswick with our facilities and maintaining our facilities, and as they continue to age, as we reinvest in them. So we're constantly improving every single facility. This was an unforeseen condition under a concrete slab that no one could have foreseen or predicted. What is the incentive to bring students back to school? We want students back in school. We want them to have that experience. There's no incentive to having students working remotely. This is simply an opportunity that we have to regain the day and not have to go later in the summer. It's not the best scenario for every student, as I said earlier, and we acknowledge that, but we're simply making the best of it, and Dr. Vanella and his administrative team and staff are working very hard to make sure that experience for every student is seamless. And if we have any hiccups, we're going to deal with them. We think that virtual instruction for most students that they're able to maintain. We realize there are some face-to-face experiences that you can't replicate in the virtual environment. That's why it's important for us to get back. But we need to work with this together. To deal with this week to try to bring this to resolution. And we appreciate you as families and parents engaging with us, with your students, to make sure they do engage in their classes. The building will be safe to occupy, as Mr. Juliana said. We are going above and beyond to do testing to make sure that not only water testing, but air quality testing is done so we can have a signed and certified document to give to the public to say this is absolutely safe to return. And that's imperative not just for the students, but for the staff who work there as well. And could this type of problem happen again? Absolutely. The design of the building, I'm not going to lie to you, the design of the building and the structure that we're dealing with under the slab construction, utilities under slabs, we could have this happen again. And it is a time-consuming process to remediate, as we're finding out. We didn't have any evidence that we were losing water pressure, that we were having any kind of evidence of something that was an anomaly. until Dr. Vanella and his staff saw water coming up out of the floor. So that was the first indication that we had a major problem. So, you know, we're going to take measures to do whatever we can with things that we know to make sure that we try to prevent these things in the future. But those things that are buried 6, 7, 8 feet underground, we will not know about them in the future until they break. So just wanted to put that out there too. So with that, I will be open to if anybody has any questions. And I would like you just to, if you would, keep the questions to this topic tonight. Yes. And if you would, we need you on the microphone. I apologize, but in order for you to, we are actually recording this tonight, and they will not be able to pick up your commentary if you don't come to the mic.
Dr. Valesky, thank you. We spoke before the meeting. Do you have any time frame for when the school play will be delayed? Like what's the new date?
Early December, Dr. Boyce. Joyce, do you have your mic?
At this time, we're looking at early December to reschedule the play so
Okay.
that the crew can work on the scenery and so that the students can practice their performance.
And also, SAT testing has been moved to Churchill Junior High School. That will be the same time and duration, but the location's being changed, and we'll communicate that. Dr. Vanella is working with Mr. Hannes at Churchill Junior High School to accomplish that. Are there, sure.
So if it's not where you think it is, what's the plan B? If plan A doesn't work, to get our kids back in school?
We're going to find it. There's no doubt we're going to find it.
Yes, but if it's not this week, what happens next week? And what happens the following week? I need to know what the deal is.
Okay.
I don't doubt you're doing everything in your power to get the school open. That's not what I'm questioning.
Right.
But we need a plan B.
Well, we don't have a place we can take the students. We don't have another
And
facility
that's
to
what
take the
scares the
students.
crap out of me and my daughter.
Okay.
That's exactly why I'm here.
Okay.
And like, I'm thinking next week, are kids really going to come? If it's, I mean, luckily we only have, I think the school should be closed next week. Not this virtual stuff, because that gives you a whole nother week. But I'm sorry, those are just some of my issues.
Okay.
And it's a
We
big deal. This
want
virtual learning is a huge problem for my daughter.
Okay, I understand.
I want to make sure that, in case I haven't made that abundantly clear.
Okay.
And I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. Go ahead, Mr. Giuliano.
So concurrently, our contractors are looking at other options. We're not going to wait to see, is the break in that one location? We're looking at other options to potentially have to identify other points in the continuum of that pipe where we may be able to do some cutoffs and reroute water to be able to feed the water devices, sinks, toilets, and so forth throughout the areas that are affected. So there is more than one procedure that's taking place. So we're not waiting until we get to the bottom and don't find what we need. We're trying to take some additional precautions, but we're limited because we don't know what we don't know.
Good evening. Can you guys elaborate on the oil? You said something about oil being spilled, and will there be a opportunity to know, will the water and oil ever commingle? Because you said that the water and oil are kind of mixing together now, so how are you going to separate that out? Thank you.
So just to be clear, the first issue we were dealing with was a known water break. When they opened the floor, they discovered that on the water there was evidence of oil. We come to understand that the oil was sitting on top of the water. We don't know the exact location of where this oil came from or how it migrated. We do know that in this vicinity there is likely a fuel oil line that serviced a boiler or some kind of mechanical equipment at some past time. So we just don't know the extent of the oil. It's not in the system. It's not in the water. This is in the pit area where they opened the floor. So we're not talking about oil contaminating the drinking water. We're not talking about commingling any of that for the domestic use water or portable water use. So right now, it's just evidence that the oil was there. There is an odor contained in this space. That's why it's being ventilated. You cannot smell anything in the rest of the building. I've personally been in the building. Dr. Vanella, today, did you detect any odors outside the contained area? It's completely sealed up, so it's just basically contained right now. But as Mr. Giuliano said, we're hoping to get down to the source of the break tomorrow. And if we don't by Wednesday, I will keep the community updated. By Wednesday, I'm going to give you an update of what our progress is and what we expect for the duration of this week. I'm not going to leave you hanging. Does that help explain the oil-water situation? So we don't believe we have a safety issue at all right now.
Firstly, I'm appreciative of how expertly this is handled. It's a crisis, it's quick, it happens, and I think it's being handled very well. My question is there any concern that there'll be structural problems with like the walls if there's a vacant spot with a plate on it?
The short answer is no. We're not interfering with any of the ground material beneath any walls or foundations. This is an area right in the middle of the corridor. It doesn't impact any of the walls, any of the foundations beneath. That is not a concern. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that as they are excavating, just for additional precautions, the contractor will be installing what you see typically on a construction site out on the roadway, braces to keep any of the soil from collapsing into the opening. So we don't have any concern on that.
I came back to this photograph that I put up earlier. You can see this on the right-hand side. It represents the perimeter up against the wall. It's about between 20 and 24 inches. It's a walkable space because I've actually walked around that side and the back of this. But that's about how far they're staying from the walls and the footers where the walls are right now.
Good evening. I have a couple questions. One, I understand the water main break happened, nothing you could do about it, understand that. But then you say that you have oil that you see. You say you're looking for the water main break. What about where the oil's coming from?
It's happening at the same time. We're looking for the source of the oil as well.
Okay. So now the soil that's being sent out, that's being sent out to be tested, that the groundwater is safe.
The soil is being sent out to be pulled out of the building completely. We are taking all of that soil out until they get to clean soil.
But if you don't know where the oil came from, you're just digging down, keeping going down until you find where the oil did come from?
Until we find the source. Mhm.
Okay. So as a lady was asking, what happens if the soil does come back and there is a problem? Now what are we talking about in terms of coming back?
So let's clarify in terms of the soil and the removal and what's happening with that. That soil will be removed and disposed off-site. The pit will be refilled with clean soil from another source. It will not be that same soil cleaned and reintroduced.
But we still won't know where the oil came from.
And we may never know, quite frankly, because the system is so old. We don't utilize oil. I've been here almost 30 years. We have not utilized oil in my entire time here.
But weren't there architectural plans that showed where all this stuff was?
No.
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 For a school, there's no architectural plans that showed
Not that
oil
show,
tanks, any
not
of
that show where the lines are. No, it doesn't. And if we refer back, there have been so many changes to this facility over time that there's no way to know where everything is. Now, That is the reality of what we're dealing with.
So just so you all understand that the exchange that just happened, typically when any school facility is built, you have an architectural design, you have very detailed plans. But as the building is being built, if there are modifications to that construction during the time it's being built, usually what the architects have to produce these days are what's called as-built drawings. So when you finish the building, you know exactly where everything is. You know where they've moved everything. You know where everything resides. And we don't have as-built drawings for the older parts of this building. But, you know, as Mr. Giuliano said, we're taking the soil out. There's not going to be any contaminated soil left behind. And we're working with a licensed site remediation professional who's guiding our work. We're not doing this. We are using environmental people who are working with the State Department of Health and for environmental protection to make sure that we are compliant in everything that we do. So we're taking their lead and we're doing what they're telling us to do.
I'm a 30-year teacher at the high school, so I may have a couple years on you. 2 questions. Number 1, any building prior to 1980, you have to have a concern for asbestos, especially in the floor tiles. The public library was closed for 3 weeks under the threat of partially redoing some of their floor tiles. That's the first point. Second point is, this is not the first time that this has happened in this particular section of the building. If I remember right, and I want to say somewhere in the 90s, maybe December of 95, which was a 95-96 school year where we had like 10 days off because of snow and emergencies, or in the late 90s, because I was teaching in that room the last time that bubbled up through the hall. I saw that pit, I saw that drainage pit there, and so this is a weak area where you might want to consider doing something a little more than just patching and filling.
Yeah. That was it?
Yeah.
Okay. So not to minimize what you said, I just want to be sure you were finished. So let me address those couple of things. So first, with regard to a concern for asbestos, there is no concern. The flooring in that area was not an asbestos tile floor. So it was a regular vinyl tile floor. So that's not an issue. And our environmental specialist would have advised if there was concern there. And they've got the records on the building as well, so it's not an issue. With regard to the repair, the objective right now is to get that pipe repaired, water flowing, and the building opened. We're concurrently going to look at what can we do to perhaps bypass, if that's a fragile area. We don't know what we're going to find. It may not be in the same location that you cited occurred back in 1994 or 1995. We won't know until we actually see it, but we'll look at what options there are to try to bypass that area if it is a fragile area.
Hello. The schedule that you had up, that looked like it was best case scenario. Now, in the event that it's a not best case scenario, my question again is, or I'm repeating the question that's been asked previously, what's the plan? Unfortunately, we have the option of remote. It's not a great option. Can you close the school? Can you extend the year into the summer? You said that, you know, academics, athletics, arts are impacted. Kids are impacted, and brings up some bad memories.
We haven't looked at or haven't explored anything about modifying the calendar and extending the year. Graduation is fixed because we graduate off campus. But right now, I would like the trust of the community to have us work this problem this week. I promise you I'm going to update you Wednesday. We are sitting here tonight having this conversation with you because we owe it to you. We owe you this face-to-face conversation. But we do not know what tomorrow is going to bring by midday or end of day with the contractor. And we will know more at each 4-hour segment of the day. And so we will start developing alternative plans by Tuesday evening into Wednesday if we have to do those things. I'm extremely hopeful that we can find the source of this water break and the oil source, and we can work on the resolution of that, and we can meet this timeline. That's what I'm really hopeful for. But if we can't, and if it doesn't look like that, then we are going to have an alternate plan ready to distribute to the community by Wednesday, so we know what Monday after the weekend looks like. The high school will be closed for Election Day on the 7th, but that's not what we want to exercise. I want to get students back into school.
Hi.
Hi.
Do you have I have kind of a two-part. One is like, do you have a date in your mind that you're like, oh my God, you know, if by next week this is going to be a long haul, like when is it going to be like we have to do something else, like look for another school to house them in, like when the school burned down in Edison, they housed them in a Catholic school. They kind of like moved all the students or get trailers. Like, I think that's what people are trying to know, not that you have a crystal ball, but just like by Friday, if you're like, oh my God, that's not going to work, like when are any of those things being like in the back of your minds as an option?
Well, I think that I don't want to leave you with the impression that we're considering moving the school into another facility, and here's why. When we are walking around the building today, we're talking about a footprint that is probably the space between these front seats and the front of that stage that has shut down the entire building. So no one is in there. My objective is if we don't find a resolution by tomorrow night, by Wednesday morning, as Mr. Giuliana said, looking for options to reroute the lines so we can leave that portion of the building isolated, but bring the services back to the building and allow staff and students back in the building. But that's the objective. If it looks like it's a longer haul, I'd rather leave that contained and figure out a way to bring services back to the building so we can get students back.
Thank you.
This is just a question about the oil. Is it trace amounts or substantial?
Go ahead.
In speaking with the environmental specialist we had on site today, it was literally an amount that would not fill the palm of your hand, but looked like a larger amount because it was skimming over the top of the water that had bubbled up. So it's not very much. But we followed all the procedures. We made our reports to the DEP. We're going to follow all the proper protocols for remediation. And there may not be we don't know that there's even a broken oil line. I mean, quite frankly, it may be, that may have been there for years and just worked its way over from other parts of that part of the building. There's just no way to know.
My thoughts on that are if it's such a trace amount, it's probably not like a pipe that's broken, just, like you're saying, it could be lubricant for pipe joints or something.
Hi. My question is, with all this being said, and we're delayed getting back in the building, what is the education plan? Are we still teaching at normal rates? Are you scaling it back? Are you reviewing?
We are working in collaboration with the building administration on reviewing the semester schedule. Is that what you're referring to?
Are you still going at normal speed on virtual? Because I find that very upsetting.
Pacing-wise?
Pacing-wise.
Right. The periods are shortened due to the shortened condensed schedule. Yes.
Being on virtual. My son came out of virtual learning, was 2 years behind.
Yes, understood. I understood.
That's my worry, my biggest fear.
I understand. We're looking at everything and aligning it with the schedule to get back into the building and back to regular instruction. That's the goal.
Are there any other questions? I do sincerely appreciate you all coming out tonight. I promise I'll give you an update by my typical telephone, email communication by Wednesday evening to let you know how we're progressing, and then what other options that we have exercised to try to return this building to opening as quickly as possible. So thanks again for coming out tonight.